Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 175. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Knowledge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin. This is a very special episode this week as we are joined by Freddie E. Williams II, artist and author of the DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics. And we're discussing that book. It's available at Amazon.com. It's regularly $22.95. They have it at 32% off, only $15.61. And if you haven't had a chance to pick it up, head on over to Amazon.com. Any of your major bookstores are going to have this. Definitely check online, check at your local bookstore. They can all order it. But if you haven't picked this one up, it's a great book. But we'll tell you why on this episode.
Nice work, Atom. What are these characters up to?
Joining us for this discussion on the DC Comics Guide to Digital Drawing of Comics is Freddie E. Williams II, the author. And Freddie, welcome back to Raging Bullets.
Thank you both guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
Freddie, what is the difference? One of the first things when I saw this, when you think about digital drawing, I've read comics since I was a kid. What is the difference between drawing digitally and traditional methods for an artist standpoint? Because I've had the pleasure of seeing you at cons. You've drawn a number of commissions for me. You drew that wonderful Superman one and the Robin one, which is one of my favorites. So I've seen you doing the pencil sketches. What's the difference as an artist, though, to be working digitally?
Let's see, the essential part of it is it's the same, because we're still drawing with our hand holding, but instead of holding a normal writing implement, we're holding a stylus, either for a Wacom tablet, which is basically for anyone who's ever gone to a grocery store and has to sign their name on the credit card, the little screen or whatever. That's essentially you're holding a stylus, or if you have a PDA or something like that, each of those uses a stylus. Some people, like I use a Wacom tablet, other people use a Cintiq, where you're drawing basically right directly on the screen so you can see where you're writing or drawing. So essentially we're using the same tool or the same idea. We're still using our hand to draw, but past that, working digitally to draw anything, comic books included, it basically gives you the opportunity to correct your work or to try new ideas without being detrimental to your old work. For example, if you have an idea for a pose that you're working on and you like that, but you then suddenly have another idea, you can turn off the layer of the first idea, turn it off so that it's no longer visible, and then just start sketching your next idea. Now, if that new idea pans out, great. If it doesn't, though, you can delete it or turn it off and then go back to your first idea with no detriment to either sketch. In that sense, it's more diverse. It's also, you can tweak body proportions and other things until you're happy with it. So if you've drawn, I know for me, the entire time I'm doing convention sketches, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I wish I had undo. I just, I'm inking someone's face and my hand didn't quite do what I wanted it to do. And now I'm either stuck with it as it is, or I have to try to make the line thicker to cover up the mistake, or I have to white it out, but then something about using whiteout, it changes the texture of that specific eye and all that stuff. I'm not a big fan of using whiteout. Those things come up when you're working traditionally. When you're working digital, it's less of an issue because you could either erase it very easily without using whiteout, or you can, if you drew the eye at the wrong angle, you just select it with your lasso tool and then rotate it so that it's at the correct angle. You can scale it to be a different size. I think that that's probably a good primer for why people might work digitally and what the difference is. So it's still the same ideas, but it's just a little bit more diverse, and you have has more versatility.
More freedom.
Exactly, more freedom.
What led to the creation of this book? Like, why a how-to book? How did you get involved in this? What was the driving force behind it?
Let's see, I was actually pretty hesitant, or reticent at least, of working on a how-to book when the idea was first brought up to me, not by DC, but by just a couple of my friends who were saw how I was working. They thought that it was an interesting and unique way of working, and they suggested, or they basically asked me, are you going to make a book? Are you going to write a book out of this? And to be honest, it felt kind of arrogant, the idea of writing a how-to book, because it felt like it would be perceived as if I was saying, this is how you do things. I figured it all out. Freddie Williams has figured out this process, and this is how you should do it. After, it was about a course over the first year that I was working for DC, I had several conversations with different friends where each of them made a good point along the lines of, it's not about arrogance, it's about sharing the idea, sharing the knowledge of it. It could possibly open up other ways of working from other people, that meaning I don't have to put out the book as if it's a definitive statement on this is the way to work. You can put it out and say, this is what I have found has worked for me, and then go from there. And if people, but always keep the tone throughout the book, and I try to do this very much throughout the book, that this might not be the only way to work or the best way to work, but it has worked well for me, and it's a process hopefully others can learn from, and that sort of thing. I spoke to the DC licensing department, and it was right up their alley. They were very receptive to it, where they said, hey, this sounds like it's right up our alley. It would work real well in our line of how-to books. It would be the logical progression, even from their standpoint, on what would be the next how-to book.
Throughout the book, there was a lot of words like explore and play. You were really encouraging people to take a look at your framework, take a look at the way that how you do it, but also to go beyond that, go in their own direction. One of the things I love about comics is the fact that every artist is unique. And it's because you guys are all trying new things, playing around with the tools that are already there, and that every month when you see a new issue from somebody, you're going to get something different, something, and that's part of the joy of appreciating any art form.
There's been times while I've been working, it was before the how-to book, it was just while I was developing my own digital workflow, that I would learn from somebody who may not work in Photoshop as much as I do, just looking over their shoulder, and I saw something they did, and I was like, whoa, how'd you do that? I think that if anyone who's learning, any program, not just Photoshop, but as long as they don't have, overly blown expectations on how fast they're going to adapt to things, and they're not afraid to just save different versions of files and try things on new layers, basically, so they're not committing to something that might be destructive or disappointing to their results, and just get in there and just start playing. As opposed to building up in your mind an expectation or a fear or something along those lines of being nervous about trying it so much so that you might get perfection paralysis or something. I think that if somebody keeps an open mind and just tries to do the basics, but then as they work on the basics, their skill set will grow out of that, like as they discover to do more things from it. So, and actually, even my technique evolved throughout because it took me like about 2.5 years, a little less than that, to write the book. My process even changed throughout it.
I want to jump to something in Chapter 5 that I was thinking when I was reading it. Chapter 5 is Digital and Hybrid Workflows. As I looked at the layout of the chapters, it's very step-by-step, which you were talking about the amount of time it takes. Don't feel like when you're jumping into digital that you're going to jump into it and get it right away. This takes some time. You got to learn the process. I liked the step-by-step elements of it because I was thinking about an artist right now who's working on deadlines, for example, somebody who's considering maybe dabbling in this and trying to do some digital work. I liked the step-by-step layout of the book because of the fact I felt, you could do a couple of steps, take a break, keep your own deadlines with whatever company you're working for right now, but then you could come back and pick up right where you left off. It was very easy to follow the flow throughout the entire book. And the whole book's laid out that way. But it was something I noticed in that chapter in particular was just how easy it was to follow the steps.
That's very sweet of you. No.
I don't know if we should cuddle now or what. It's like
I would feel violated if we did. I'm glad that it came off like that. I didn't want, because I tried to break down the book into bite-sized steps throughout the whole book. The book is like 10, 12 chapters, something. I guess it's 12 chapters. But although the first chapter is more of an introduction, and then chapter 12 is more like a looking forward to the future. So it's basically 10 chapters of substance for digitally drawing. And in chapter 5, when I do talk about the digital and hybrid workflows, there's even an exercise in there, like you were saying, that basically I wanted to, since everything else in the book is compartmentalized, I wanted to give a microcosm look at the workflow, which is what chapter 5 is about. It's so that you can see how does all this work together? Where am I at in this process? It's almost like an overhead map of the procedure. And there's even an exercise in there where you're starting from a completely blank document, and I take you through step by step from the roughs, so you're doing digital roughs, to the tighter version of the roughs, which is called breakdowns, to then wireframes, to all the way through to the inks stage.